In this video, I will be discussing the differences between the movie The Founder and the real story surrounding the creation of McDonald's. I will also share with you a brilliant scheme widely studied in top business schools that surprisingly wasn't depicted in the film. Thanks to this scheme, Ray Kroc managed to acquire all the rights from the McDonald brothers for $2.7 million without using any of his own personal funds. In the feature film The Founder, many events are not directly altered, but rather several aspects are understated or portrayed in a more favorable light, omitting less engaging details. For example, the film begins with Ray Kroc driving around America, attempting to sell mixers to owners of cafes and cocktail bars. Unfortunately, the results are largely negative, with the majority of his attempts resulting in rejection. Then one day the secretary tells Kroc that the McDonald brothers need up to 8 mixers at once because they can't keep up with the high demand from customers who want milkshakes. Kroc travels across the country to San Bernardino to meet the McDonald brothers and, inspired by their innovative restaurant, begins building a franchise. This is shown in the film, but the reality is a little different. Before meeting the McDonald brothers, Kroc wasn't a super successful businessman, but he also wasn't a 50-year-old loser who just made ends meet either. He had his own company which had been selling mixers for many years, and Ray Kroc didn't really chase after customers selling unnecessary goods as shown in the movie. The mixers were a successful product, and Ray managed to save a substantial amount of money from their sales. He would later use this money to fund the construction of the franchise network. In 1954, customers who ordered mixers from Kroc's company started adding a peculiar request saying, "We need the exact same mixer as the one used by the McDonald brothers in San Bernardino." At first, Kroc didn't pay much attention to this peculiar request. However, when nearly half of his customers began asking for a mixer similar to the one used by the McDonald brothers, curiosity got the better of him and he became intrigued. He decided to inquire about the brothers and their unique business approach. Quote from Ray Kroc's book, "To my amazement, I discovered that the McDonald's didn't just have 1 or 2 mixers, but a total of 8. I could hardly imagine the sight of 8 machines simultaneously whipping 40 cocktails, with each one handling 5 at a time. Even more astonishing to me was the fact that the brothers' business was located in San Bernardino, a sleepy town lost in the California desert. In contrast to what the movie portrays, it wasn't the brothers who reached out to the struggling mixer salesman, altering the course of his life. Instead, it was Ray Kroc, a proactive and driven individual, who sought out the brothers himself. In the movie, after visiting a McDonald's restaurant, Kroc was amazed at the instant ordering available to customers, despite the very limited menu consisting only of hamburgers, fries, and drinks. Having fallen in love with the concept, Kroc immediately signed a contract and began developing a McDonald's franchise. In real history, as I said earlier, Kroc made a lot of money selling mixers, and the first idea he came up with was to supply mixers to all the restaurants that would be part of the McDonald's franchise. In the film, the brothers claimed that they were unsuccessful with the franchise because no one was willing to adhere to their stringent quality standards. The movie portrays that only one restaurant operated because the brothers were unwilling to exert themselves and expand the network. In reality, after Ray proposed to supply his mixers to all McDonald's restaurants, he discovered that the expansion of the network had come to a halt because the previous franchise agent had resigned due to health issues. However, there were no significant issues with the expansion of the network. Richard and Mac McDonald had already sold more than 20 franchises before they crossed paths with Ray Kroc. Witnessing such rapid growth, Kroc decided to go all in and invest all of his accumulated money in the franchise's development. As I said earlier, if you get the impression from watching the movie that Ray Kroc was a 50-year-old loser before McDonald's, that impression is incorrect. I want to clarify that, contrary to the portrayal in the movie and many articles on the internet, Ray Kroc was not a struggling mixer salesman. The notion that he was unsuccessful before his involvement with McDonald's is misleading. Even in the film, Kroc has a lot of respectable friends who spend their days playing golf, and it is these friends who become the first buyers of the McDonald's franchise. I think it's evident that people usually socialize with peers equal in social status, and if Ray was struggling financially, he would naturally have a corresponding circle of acquaintances. Also, for many, Kroc's previous occupations might have sounded ridiculous, namely that of paper cup and fold-a-nook salesman. In the movie, Kroc's previous occupations are repeatedly emphasized. He is even teased by his friends at the club about it, and the bank clerks vividly remember his past jobs, leading them to refuse his loan application.
The folder nook. It's like a Murphy bed for your kitchen. Huh?
However, in reality, Ray wasn't just a paper cup salesman, he was the head of the paper cup sales department. That's why he was able to afford the big house where his family lived long before he even started his own mixer company. I also want to remind you that Ray was selling cups during the Great Depression, a time when many people in America didn't always have enough money for basic necessities, let alone luxuries. So to summarize and conclude this topic, the narrative that portrays Ray Kroc as a loser at the age of 52, who then went on to change his destiny and build the most famous fast food network in the world may sound appealing. However, if we label Kroc as a loser based on his pre-McDonald's life, then 98% of the world population at that time should be considered as losers as well. After Kroc became an agent for the franchise, as in the movie, the first thing he did was to open a McDonald's in his home state of Illinois. But the film doesn't show Ray having to buy a contract from the Fredgelac Ice Cream Company for $25,000. It was this company that had previously bought the exclusive right to represent McDonald's in Illinois from the McDonald brothers. Let me remind you, this is the 1950s and $25,000 then is like $250,000 now. And it's just the money to buy the rights, without taking into account the construction of the restaurant. But what was truly commendable about the film was showing Ray Kroc's unwavering persistence and unfaltering commitment. Kroc considered business as a war and called himself a scarred veteran hardened on the business fronts. He had diabetes and arthritis in the early stages, and had lost his gallbladder and thyroid gland in previous battles. Despite all these combat losses, Ray continued to work hard because he had confidence that the best was ahead of him. It was Ray who was able to successfully discover the true franchising potential of the network. Kroc introduced standardization, automation, and discipline, while carefully selecting franchise owners based on their work ethic and ambition. Ray quickly understood what he needed to focus on, realizing that his main goal was to attract customers through the high reputation of the entire system rather than relying solely on the quality of food in a single restaurant. To achieve this, franchise owners required thorough training and continuous supervision. Later, Ray even opened a hamburger university in his native Illinois, where employees received training and certificates in hamburger and French fries preparation. The movie also correctly shows that before Ray Kroc began accelerating the company's growth and sharpening the chain to uniform quality standards, McDonald's was really a place where people could eat fast, high quality, and most importantly, healthy meals. Before Kroc took over the company, milkshakes were made with real milk, and it was with his arrival that French fries took a turn for the worse, becoming the more unhealthy and harmful option known today. In the 1950s, it was already common practice to use oil leftover from frying chicken or other foods to cook French fries, which could result in the production of carcinogens. However, the McDonald brothers did not engage in any fraudulent practices regarding the oil they used. They weren't even tempted to do that, because they didn't cook anything else in oil besides French fries. With the arrival of Kroc, the focus on food quality took a back seat, and the company's primary objective became continuous growth. In the movie, Ray mortgaged his house in order to open the first restaurant, and immediately after its opening, financial problems ensued. In reality, as mentioned earlier, Ray had financial resources prior to McDonald's, and he initiated the early development of the chain without having to mortgage his house. Ray mortgaged the house after he met financial expert Harry Sonneborn, who explained to Ray how to make extra money without sharing it with the McDonald brothers. Specifically, Kroc needs to create a real estate company that will buy up the land on which McDonald's restaurants will be located, and franchisees will then pay an increased monthly rent for the land, thereby generating a steady large profit.
You don't seem to realize what business you're in. You're not in the burger business. You're in the real estate business.
It was this idea that Ray pawned the house because he thought it was impossible to go bankrupt on such a brilliant scheme, and in general he was right. After the establishment of Franchise Realty Corporation, the company experienced even more rapid growth, with Harry Sonneborn becoming Kroc's trusted right-hand man. Together, they worked tirelessly to attract additional funds and resources. Due to the limitations of the film's chronometry, there was not enough time to depict how Ray Kroc, who had recently mortgaged his house, was able to easily pay the $2.7 million settlement to the McDonald brothers. The thing is, Harry Sonneborn, the new advisor who came up with the idea of buying up land and then renting it out to franchisees, had agreed to sell 22.5% of McDonald's stock to insurance companies for $1.5 million. Ray used this money to open 16 personal restaurants, which were intended to serve as a backup in case of any issues with McDonald brothers. These 16 restaurants generated profits, which Ray invested in opening new restaurants. As the chain expanded, the profits continued to grow. Additionally, revenue was generating through the rental of land mortgaged by Ray to franchisees. This cycle of reinvestment and expansion eventually led Ray Kroc and his company to achieve a national presence, while the McDonald brothers remained localized.
I'm national. You're fucking local.
Finally, the moment arrived that should have come much earlier. Like a rocket breaking free from the force of gravity and shedding its unnecessary weight, Ray Kroc made the decision to part ways with the McDonald's brothers. Their presence had become a hindrance, slowing down the network's progress. It was time to let go of the ballast and propel the company forward. Just like in the movie, the McDonald's brothers asked for a payment of $2.7 million in exchange for fully transferring the rights to the McDonald's trademark. Ray Kroc faced the challenge of raising a significant sum of money, which posed a considerable obstacle. While he could have potentially raised the funds by withdrawing money from circulation and selling additional stock, his financial assistant Gary Sonneborn devised a far more advantageous scheme. I suggest paying close attention to this point as it holds significant importance. This particular scheme is still extensively studied in the most esteemed business schools as an exemplary solution to critical situations. A group of investors, later documented by McDonald's as the 12 Apostles, provided $2.7 million in cash. In exchange, McDonald's agreed to pay the Apostles 0.5% of the gross receipts from all McDonald's restaurants. The payment was divided into 3 periods. During the first period, McDonald's immediately paid 0.4% of the gross receipts as part of the payment, while the remaining 0.1% was deferred until the third period. The first period concluded with the full payment of the principal. The second period would last the same duration as the first period, regardless of its length. During this period, McDonald's was obligated to pay only 0.5% of the gross income. In the third period, McDonald's made a deferred payment of 0.1% that was originally deferred from the first period. You probably didn't realize right away what was so ingenious about this scheme. The point is that Kroc was already paying that 0.5% of revenues to the McDonald brothers and had to pay it throughout the company's existence. But Ray successfully removed the McDonald brothers from the business without having to spend a single cent of his own money. In a remarkable turn of events, he managed to pay off his creditors within a span of 6 years using the same funds that he would have otherwise used to settle his financial obligations to the McDonald brothers. In the film, Kroc made a verbal promise to the brothers, agreeing to give them 1% of the future profits. However, this agreement was not documented in writing. Whether this was the case in reality or not is difficult to ascertain. However, according to Kroc, there was a different understanding between him and the brothers initially. They were originally supposed to give him their first restaurant in San Bernardino, but at the last minute they changed their minds. According to Kroc, opening a McDonald's restaurant across from theirs was his way of teaching them a lesson. Brothers' first restaurant could no longer bear the distinguished name of McDonald's. It was renamed the Big M and eventually closed down because it could not withstand the competition with McDonald's. The McDonald brothers retired and began to travel the world. A few years later, one of the brothers, Maurice, died, and Dick returned to his homeland and married his high school sweetheart. For many years, McDonald's celebrated Founders Day on October 5th, Ray Kroc's birthday. In 1991, the company decided to honor the McDonald brothers in addition to Kroc. They're the founders. They founded the concept, said Fred Turner, then senior chairman of McDonald's. Thanks for watching the video to the end. I hope you had a nice time.